Okay. Troll McTrollerson says, you scaled down and made a Sissy hatchet. Good starter for a little girl. Shingle hammer for bushcraft should only have needed a better grind on the cutting edge. I hope your future vids sow more common sense. Good luck.
Thank you, Trolly McTrollerson. Talking about the bushcraft axe and talking about cutting off material. I trimmed down the head to the hammer pole, and I removed the nail puller, and I reshaped the bit. I do it for the form. I mean, this is an axe for me, and the one I made in the video was for myself. Again, you know, the function, it's still going to work like an axe. I take off some material because I like the look of it. I don't necessarily like the straight cut or the kind of the opposite curve, the convex curve. Or convex with the nail puller, so I removed that on the half hatchets. The blades are straight, and he does mention kind of reprofiling the blade, so I did that. And then I also cut off the hammer pole some too, just because, again, the proportions, you know, I'm an artist and I'm also a maker, and so when I'm making something, the function and form work together. So I want the form to be what I want it to be, so I usually trim down some of the hammer pole because I don't like it as long as it is. There's another one. That one's got the full length hammer pole, and it's okay. But I think, the function and the form of this look a little bit better. Depends on what you want, but I make the stuff that I want to make the way I want to make it, and you get to watch it for free. So I hope you enjoy.
Do you feel bad about changing a tool from its original iteration into something that it wasn't maybe meant to be, or it's not what it's like? Some people are like, it's a classic.
Right, yeah.
Even though,
I can't believe you ruined that half hatchet that has such a history of, what it was used for. It's worth billions of dollars. No, I don't. Obviously, if I found a half hatchet that had, a Black Raven stamp on it, I wouldn't mess with it, But like a Dunlop USA, this is something that was probably made in the 80s, and it probably cost $12 to buy it when it was made, and I bought it for maybe $2. I'm not worried about making adjustments to that. I modify the axes that I want to modify. I buy the things that I want to buy, and I do what I want with them. I'm a collector of axes and tools to use those axes and tools. So if I find something that has some historical significance, it's usually not something I'm going to keep. I'll probably sell it to be able to buy another tool that I can use. And so that's my right as the person who bought it. Hey guys, welcome back to the Art of Craftsmanship. My name is Dustin, and today in the shop, I'm going to be answering the 5 best questions of the week. Now, Devin's going to be asking me some questions from some of our viewers and from different videos, and I'll do my best to answer them for you guys. And at the end, I'll do a little show and tell.
From the Osage Bow video, Joe Cola. Why does he take so much care to follow the growth rings on one side, but not on the other?
Okay. So making a self bow, you have a growth ring on the back of the bow. The back of the bow is the part that bends. It's the part that faces away from you when you draw the bow. Let me grab a bow. All right. Perfect example. So this is the part of the broken 100-pound draw war bow that we made. The back of the bow is the bow that faces away from you when you're holding the handle. The belly of the bow is facing towards you. Now, it's important to keep one growth ring on the back of the bow because that is the part that's under tension. When you're pulling it towards you, that is your strength in the bending because it's one full piece. On the Osage, on this video where I made the 100-pound draw bow, I used a piece of rawhide to back it, and that was a substitute for that growth ring. Although I did chase a growth ring down, that was a substitute for that single piece of material because under tension, when it's bending like that, the tension is where you want the strength to keep the bow from breaking. The limbs, the strength is in the tension. That's the part that's bending and stretching. On the belly of the bow, this is under compression, so it's being pushed together. Those growth rings on the belly of the bow are not going to come apart. They're not going to break or shatter because they're being pushed together. So it's like when you're stretching the wood, you don't want it to break apart. That's why you need one full piece. When it's pushing together, you don't have to worry about it breaking apart or shattering. So that's why the belly of the bow, you don't need to chase one growth ring, and the back you do.
From 10 steps to hang an axe, Norman Wilson asks, I have yet to see any hanging presentation that denotes, except for the obvious, which side of the axe head faces down the handle and which side faces up, especially where both sides of the blade are of the same length and curvature. Perhaps you could help out here.
When you are hanging an axe, you want to hang it properly, right? So the toe, which is the top of the blade or the bit, the toe is the top, the heel is the bottom. He's asking, how do you know which one's which? So how do you know that this is not the toe and this is the heel? Well, this is a good example of a typical axe that kind of shows that on its own, right? The beard or the heel is usually longer, so it'll hang down further. That's one way to identify. But he said if they're the same, symmetrical on top and bottom. So this is a Connecticut pattern axe. This one's a little bit more symmetrical. It's kind of, depending on how you're looking at it, sometimes it's a little bit harder to tell. The other fail-safe way to tell what's in the top and bottom on an axe is that the eye is an hourglass, but it's also tapered. So the top of the eye, the top, which will be on the top of your axe, is almost always going to be at least a little bit wider. So across the top, this axe is 2 3/4 at the top. At the bottom, the eye at the bottom is 2 5/8. So it's an 1/8 of an inch smaller at the bottom than is the top. And that's a very, very standard thing for axes. There are some Finnish axes where the eye is small at the top and some French axes as well. But if you're looking for pretty much any standard axe you're going to find in the States, it's going to have that eye definition, and that's your fail-safe way to tell what's the top and what's the bottom.
From the Making 3 Knife Sheaths video, BJL516 says, what thickness leather do you recommend for making a sheath?
Sheaths are typically made out of 7/8 ounce leather. When you buy leather, it'll come in ounce, referring to the thickness and the weight of it, but it'll almost always be in 2 numbers. So 3/4, 5/6, 7/8, 9/10. 7/8 ounce leather is what I've found typically is the best for knife sheaths. This is a piece that's been down here in my shop, so a little bit moldy, or a little bit mildewy. But this is, let's see, we're about a little bit over 1/8 of an inch. But I've just found that it gives you, it's the right stability and thickness to be able to hold its shape, but not so thick that it's overkill. The 7/8 ounce leather is just about right. Once you mold the leather sheath to the knife, which typically happens when you're making a sheath for a knife, you want to kind of mold it so that way it sits down in nice and tight. And especially if you have, say, like a Coke bottle shaped handle, if you're doing a bushcraft type sheath where you're not planning on putting a snap or like some type of toggle that's going to hold it in, you want to have the sheath nice and deep. And when you get it nice and deep down and you have that Coke bottle shape, you can actually mold the leather sheath around it so it kind of snaps into place, so it can sit down in and hold the handle really well. 7/8 ounce leather will stay in that shape. Once you wet it and mold it and it dries, it'll stay in that shape. When you get below that weight, it becomes less rigid once it's dry. So 7/8 ounce leather is typically the weight that you want for knife sheaths.
From the Attaching Handle Scales, the knife making build along, Essential Do-It-Yourselfer says, can you share the info on what epoxy you're using as well as the white accent sheets?
The brand of epoxy is not super important. G-Flex is a really good standard epoxy from West Systems that a lot of knife makers use. It has been tried and tested, but I've also used other 2-part epoxies. You just want a strong 2-part epoxy, something you can mix together. When I started knife making, I would use 5-minute epoxies because that's what you can get from the hardware store, but then I switched to 30-minute epoxies, and now I use, typically I'll use something like this, which is a G-Flex. This epoxy, it's a thickened epoxy, and this has like a 45-minute pot lifetime and a working time of 75 minutes and a gel time of 3 to 4 hours. So it's a lot more time to work with that epoxy. So once you mix it together, the hardener and the resin together, you have a lot more working time, which for a knife, you have done all this stuff, you've taken your time, you've ground it, you've prepared everything, and then you want to give yourself enough time to get that handle on cleanly and, don't try to rush it. So get a 2-part epoxy that has a long working time, maybe an hour or 45 minutes, something like that should be perfectly good. The other part of the question was the white liner material, or the material that I use, the sheet material in between the handle material. And what I was using in that video was specifically a white acrylic sheeting, and it's a sign maker sheeting that I get from scraps from a sign shop near here. And that's just, again, it's just a light fast acrylic, so it's just a plastic. And that's just an accent for the knife handle. It's not, I've heard different people say that, you're putting a barrier between steel and wood because, those two materials don't like to work together. But I think that really it's just an accent, it's detail. It's a plastic, so it's going to be more stable than wood over the length of time that it's there, and it's light fast, so it'll hold its color. But that's a sign maker material. I've also used G10, and I've used micarta for different things, just different materials for liners, but you can just put in lots of different colors and things in there. That's what we use.
From the Making 3 Knife Sheaths video, Cam says, what's the oil that you use?
I use neat's foot oil. Neat's foot oil is a specific leather oil. That's it. It's what I've always used. It's specifically designed and made with mixes of different types of oil. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's specifically designed for leather to condition and keep leather from drying out. Once leather dries out, then it becomes brittle and cracks. So you want to make sure you condition your leather. A lot of times with leather sheaths, people will wax them to keep them waterproof, but even that'll wear off over time. So you can re-oil it. People will use different type of saddle soaps and conditioners, but I use neat's foot oil. It's what I've found to be the best, and it's most readily available. I can find it in most places. You can get it at hardware stores or leather shops. You can buy it online.
Is there a specific brand you like, or?
No, I have a few different ones. I've used Feeblings, which is a very common brand. This one is Lincoln, I think. Prime neat's foot oil compound. I don't think it's super specific. This says do not use on delicate leathers. So depending on what the different type of leather, if you're using something like suede, you don't want to use oils and things like that because they've already been conditioned and made. But for all knife sheaths and things, I use neat's foot oil. All right, show and tell time. This axe is a Collins Legitimus Connecticut pattern axe on what I assumed was its original slim handle. This is a beautiful Connecticut pattern design, and I've had this for 7 or 8 years, I think. Did a video on sharpening this and cleaning it up, and I think we rehung this axe as well in the video. This actually recently broke, and it had been a really good axe for a long time. The interesting thing is that I picked this axe up not too long ago, within the last year. This is an unmarked axe. It has no markings on it that I can see or find. No, it does have some markings on it, but it is something different than this. I think it's my research is correct. It was something like a hardware store. It says something USA. It seemed like an older brand, but or potentially a different time frame. But this axe head and this axe head are exactly the same shape. They have all of the shape, like all of the rounding is all exactly the same. The pole is the same. Everything is exactly the same, including the handle, which I just think is interesting because it's not a Collins Legitimus. It's a different company, a different brand, but the handle is exactly the same. So 2 of the same exact axes from different companies. That just kind of reiterates one of those points that there, in history of axes, there were definitely companies like Collins that were making axes for other companies at the time. So my assumption is that this axe handle head all went through the Collins company, their warehouse or their factories, and then were given to another company, or maybe even they stamped the other company's name on it and that company sold them.
Couple questions. How did you break that one? How much were they, and where did you get them from? Like, were they close by maybe, or did you get them from totally different areas?
Gotcha. So the first question, how did I break this one? I was just using it, and it broke. I was using it to to clear out a tree that fell on the property here, and it was leaning out across one of the places that our mowing company, they mow, and so I wanted to make sure they could get through to mow it, so I was just clearing it out and throwing it into the bushes so they could mow in the areas that we mow, and it broke. When I rehung this axe, there was already overstrike damage on the handle, but it didn't break at all there. It was perfectly fine. It broke in a different place, kind of along the grain, I guess, but I mean, it broke in the place that you would think an axe handle breaks. It broke right in the front, in the middle. So all of the tension, when this thing hits down, it's, the force is stopping and the handle is flexing, and it broke exactly where it should break, which is right in the middle, and broke this way. So, this stops and the handle keeps moving, and that's where it broke. So, as for where I got them, this one I got from a guy here in Maryland. I went to a tool sale. He had a bunch of hand planes, and I went to his house and picked up this axe, and this is a True Temper Red Warrior Connecticut pattern. I got both of these axes from him for $15 a piece. And that was just me asking him. I was like, do you have any axes? I see all these tools you have. And he's like, oh, and he went out to his garage and brought in 2 Connecticut pattern, beautiful, historical, beautiful axes. This one I got from a yard sale, I think up in Vermont, if I remember correctly. So definitely not from the same place. One was in Maryland, one's up in Vermont. If it wasn't Vermont, it was somewhere up in New England, maybe when I was traveling around. And I don't remember what I paid for this. It was probably probably something under $20. I usually don't pay more than that for axes unless it's something that I really wanted. Now, this is a beautiful axe, and I probably would have paid more than $20 for it, but I don't think I did. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much. This was a blast. I really enjoy answering these questions, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. And I enjoy showing some of the stuff that we have here in the shop, so the show and tells are fun. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer, please leave us the comment down below, and we'll try to look through some of those as well as some of the comments and questions on our videos, and we'll do some more of these videos in the future. If you definitely want to get an answer to one of your questions, you can head over to patreon.com/Art of Craftsmanship and become a patron there. And for those patrons over there, ask us a question. We'll absolutely get them into future videos for questions. Also, if you want to hear more of Devin and I talking on a regular basis, you can listen to the Art of Craftsmanship podcast, which comes out every Friday. For now, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.